Nobody likes a sweaty back from a loaded backpack, and that's not your only option. Having a rear rack gives you freedom to load your lunch or pack for a long distance ride. Installing a rack on your bike is an easy task. With just a little know-how, and by following the next steps, you'll have your bike rack ready to go in no time. Before you get started, make sure your bike can accept a rack, meaning it needs to have braze-ons or threaded eyelets. Also make sure you have the correct rack. For example, if your bike has disc brakes, you may need a disc-specific rack. Lay out all the parts of your rack, making sure you have all the nuts, bolts, and rack stays. Start by putting 4 bolts through the top of the rack, then place the stays underneath so the bolts go through the slots in the stays. Hand tighten a nut onto each bolt. Now bolt the lower legs of the rack into the threaded eyelet at the rear of your bike frame. Again, just tightening these bolts by hand since you still need to adjust the final position of the rack. Next, attach the end of the stays to the braze-ons on the frame below the saddle. You might need to bend the stays a little bit to get the perfect fit. When the rack is level and parallel to the ground, tighten all the bolts, starting with the 4 on the top of the rack. When you tighten the bolts on the lower legs, make sure the bolt on the drivetrain side doesn't interfere with the chain or the cassette. If it does, use extra washers or a shorter bolt. Check that the rack doesn't interfere with the braking and the shifting capabilities of your bike. Make sure you don't exceed the rack's weight limit and that anything that you put on your rack won't get tangled in your rear wheel. As with any changes you make on your bike, check all your bolts for tightness before heading out on your next ride.